Right, so this is the archive entitled The Dope 2001, or Discourse on the Polarizing Events of 2001. It's composed of several books, and we'll break those down in a second, but primarily it's composed in three parts. The two books you see on the left are one part, and each of the black binders you see on the right are one part. There's some other peripheral books in the library of the archive, including Spiegelman's In the Shadow of No Towers, and a couple of other books by Mike Rupert and others. But this is the archive in toto. Yeah, it's very nice, that, isn't it? That's the kind of thing they make where I'm from. A lot of detail. That's quite a nice bird, isn't it? Yes, it's fun. Discourse on the Polarizing Events of 2001. Yeah. By mtk-on-the-mic with A.P. Ferrara. This is in 2005. Discourse on the Polarizing Events of 2001, or The Dope 2001, is an archive of documentation concerning the events of September 11, 2001. In the United States of America, and in particular New York, collected in the 85 days after the attacks, which includes a collection of zines produced in the year following the attacks. So that's this work. The Dope 2001. So the 85 days are divided into segments. You can see sort of some business here. This is before the attacks, summer in New York. That's Taiwan, June in Taiwan. Quick trip, ID piece. That's a cassette that goes with these. But this is the flow. Part 1, the polarizing events. September 11 to September 23rd, 2001 in Brooklyn. The first 12 days, right? That's the first 12 days. Part 2, well, there's the appendices to Part 1. Sort of that business. Part 2, we have the division of society. September 24 to November 1. So the next, something like, what's that? 30 days hath September. 37 days. And then up to the next month or so, Part 3, the Discourse recast. That's until December 5th of 2001. So these documents are from the first 85 days after the attacks. And it's a collection that I have bound together and organized myself, and it comes with this nicely bound set of zines down here, titled 2002 equals 1984. This is a collection of zines made in 2002 up until the first anniversary of 9/11. And that's what you're looking at there. This entire archive, The Dope 2001, is edited, organized, and bound by myself, mtk-on-the-mic, with A.P. Ferrara. The Dope 2001 creates an immense parallel history to that authored by the Bush administration and the corporate-controlled media by covering the opposition to retaliatory war and violence in equal terms, and by investigating the attacks as a crime rather than an act of war. So these are two very significant differences in how this particular archive addresses the facts at hand. They're simple to understand, but complex to execute in this way because of the sensational aspects of media that have been produced about September 11, and the nostalgic aspects, and the ones that have been, I think, tainted by personal conflict. I'm stripped of that, I think. I had lived in New York for 4.5 years when they were struck. This is composed from discarded documents and images found in Manhattan and Brooklyn from typed transcripts of video and audio recordings. It includes daily written journal entries of events by independent authors. It has audio recordings of the first reactions of poets, the texts of the opposition, Chomsky, Sontag, Roy, Moyers, Barbara Lee's No Vote to SGR 23, documents and images from protests and demonstrations. You can see some of this stuff. It's sort of interesting, like if we pull out part 1 here. Part 1 is the polarizing events, right? Discourse on the polarizing events, part 1. The polarizing events. You get something like... One of the only beards I ever kept is the beard from that autumn in New York. J'accuse l'État. A slipcover for the for part 1, the polarizing events. Slipcovers kind of slides off. You can actually pull it off with a string too, which is simple. J'accuse l'État, silk screened onto both sides of a small denim slip. The image from Le Figaro, published and available in New York on the 22nd, so, not even a dozen days after the attack you could get an image of this detail. Le Figaro magazine is owned by the Carlyle Group. And they'll provide something like this very early after the events at hand for people to see, right? That's kind of the front and back covers of the book. Is the site. And then in the box you have the sort of a marvelous work, this collage by T.R. Watson. Nice little collage of, actually, many years later, the February 15 protests around the world against Bush and his war. Very nice interior collage on this box. Very nice, actually. Remarkable work. And that's T.R. Watson. The book itself, we could start getting into this, I suppose. It could be one idea here is to look at the work, part 1, the polarizing event. Became the polarizing events, the title. And this is just, it gets really quite, there's audio here, there's a DVD here, there are transcripts of many people here, and images from the island that day. Manhattan, This is the first 12 days after the attacks. Corresponds in some ways to what many Hindus believe. When someone dies, you observe them for 12 days after their death. And then there are ceremonies, many, but the 12th day ceremony is a conclusory ceremony in many ways. what was unique in this instance for me then was that 12th day ceremony in this instance were 12th day was for the victims of September 11th. 12th day ceremony was conducted in Yankee Stadium. So this is the first 12 days, and forgive me, I just need to make this happen real quick, if you don't mind. And the appendices for this actually are pretty nice because they have the actual, the journals and local papers and any of those kinds of documents are here in the appendices, which includes some, really the most primary sort of objects. Yeah. The Times also, others here. And then unusual pieces are in this thing, in this collection. It's the editing really that is the primary selling point to me. I mean, not to be so capitalistic about it, but you get a division of society, and the content is very fascinating. Division of society is, when this campaign for war becomes very concrete. It's either us or it's them. Right? That's part 2 here. Begins actually with a remarkably beautiful expression in advance of this. And there are, there's a lot going on in this thing, folks. There's just a lot happening, I mean, this is New York. This kind of stuff is happening, dude. Yeah, so, there's a lot going on in this object. It's an archive of consideration. They're not, it's not an accident. There's a definite political worldview here that I think is very much absent from popular interpretations and presentations of the events, the polarizing events of 2001. And I dare say the piece is, in this regard, a very important piece. Now, there you have it, the Dope 2001. This front end is a little bit jacked. Well, that's a lot of content. Let's stack it, make it a little easier. Oh, this collection of zines is quite nice. We have here. This is 2002.
well. Yeah, so 2002, after the attacks and the fictionalizing beginning is the beginning of the fictionalizing. We get into this kind of stuff. 2002 equals 1984, like a lot of people, I think. A lot going on here, some zines, really crazy content. We got some, revolution. 2002 equals 1984, yeah, punk rock shit. Oh, and then really intense zine in the back here. 2 of these zines have been placed in a lot of institutions: the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Getty Research Institute in Los Angeles. Many educational institutions around the country have picked up a couple of the zines that are in here. These are the last editions, bound in a separate book, which is really a companion to the archive. So the 85 days after the attacks, and then 1 year after the attacks to 9/11/2002. The zines that were produced in that year here, a few zines, 4. And there you have it. The Dope 2001. Composed from discarded documents and images found in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and from typed transcripts of video and audio recordings, daily typewritten journal entries, emails reprinted, independent authors, poetry, audio recordings of the first reactions of poets, the texts of opposition leaders Chomsky, Sontag, Roy, Moyers, their first comments, Castro's first comments, Barbara Lee's no vote to SJR 23, documents and images from protests and demonstrations, as well as printed copies of laws passed as a result of the attacks. There's some amazing material here in that regard. The first New York Post, New York Times, and New York Times Magazine, New Yorker Magazine, Time Magazine, Economist Magazine, Le Monde Diplomatique, Le Figaro, many other journals, magazines. 85 days after the attack, and then some zines produced in the year afterward. Discourse on the Polarizing Events of 2001. M.T. Karthik.